Welcome everybody. My name is CoCo Smith and I was asked to moderate tonight. I'm not sure what people were thinking. A little bit about myself. I live in Leucadia. I've lived here for 12 years, but I'm an original Leucadia resident. My parents moved here when I was a baby in the 1960s. And so I've been around Encinitas a long time, but I went away to college and did all that and came back to raise my family here. And I just want to sort of out myself a little bit. I don't really know much about politics and the council, and I am not an expert on anything. I have a lot of ideas and opinions, and I have a really strong curiosity, and I care a lot about community, and I care about people. I like to call myself a people person. It's hard though this time of year during elections because, you know, there's a lot of stuff coming up for the election. So anyway, I was asked to moderate, and most of you, some of you have sent in questions. And for me, the reason that I agreed, I actually was asked to do this and my first reaction was no, I don't want to do that. And because I had a strong reaction to it, and it made me fearful. I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. And when I have, in my past, I've learned when I feel the feeling of fear or a strong reaction like that, I have to sort of look at it and discover what that fear is all about. And so one of my fears was that I didn't know enough to do this. And so I did have a curiosity. I've been seeing the signs. One of the signs really, I don't know, that one sign that I see all the time, and I'm like, I don't trust that sign. Anyway, it was like, I have some feelings about it, so maybe I should embrace this and get to know the city council and ask some questions and be open. And so I'm glad you're all here. And let's see here, we are at 7:05. I want to welcome our Mayor, Catherine Blakespear, and Council members Tony Kranz and Kellie Hinze. You can see all of them. Hello. And we have our Zoom hosts are in the background helping. If you have any technical difficulties, you can, I don't know, raise your hand and we'll try and help you with that. Hopefully everybody can hear. My volume's okay. Okay, thank you, Ross, for nodding your head. You've obviously been on here. Thank you, Ron. So there will be some questions asked. If you have questions tonight and they didn't get answered, you know, you do have access to contact your council members. They have a website. All their emails are posted there. And from what I've found out, they will respond to you and talk to you. So if you don't get your questions answered or you still have some stuff that's going on that you want to talk about, they're available. You can email them. And also, I know that some people are, you know, want to know how they can support these candidates. And I'm sure they're still taking campaign contributions, putting up signs, making calls, things like that. Do you have any candidates? Do you have anything to say on that matter of how people, if they'd like to support you, how they can do that?
Well, I think at all of our websites. So all of our websites are pretty easy to find if you type our names into Google.
Okay, very good. So one of the things I wanted to ask the candidates personally, I really wanted to take this time to get to know them. There's been a lot of forums and some debates, and we can hear about, you know, their issues. I wanted to take some time and get to know them a little bit. I hope you will indulge some of my own personal questions. And I haven't really, I've had a phone call with each one just to introduce myself and say hello, but I don't really know these candidates. We don't socialize. We're not friends like them, but we don't really know each other. But one of the things that I'm curious about, because when elections happen, there's opponents, and opponents come up and they're like, oh yeah, I can do that better, or I don't, what, the ding dogs are going to make me a little crazy. But I was wondering, candidates, when you were running or wanted to have this position, or for Kellie, you were, getting ready to start this job that you were appointed to, what did you realize after you got the job and started doing it? What were you naive about this job? Like, what was it that you was like, oh, I didn't think it was going to be like that, or I thought I was going to be able to do this, or something that you felt like was a naivety to this position?
I can answer that first because I'm the newest one.
Great, thanks, Kellie.
So I think it's twofold. The first thing is that as a council member, you have these projects that come before you that are designed by a private property owner, and you can feel a personal feeling about that project. If you don't like it, you don't like how it looks, you don't like some part of how it functions. And to be able to deny that project, you have to have a reason that's grounded in our planning documents. And our planning documents were made so long ago that a lot of times, especially when it relates to climate change, and you have a project that was approved a really long time ago and it's coming back before you, you're looking for a reason why it doesn't match our planning documents anymore. And so I think the hardest thing is that a lot of times we'll get criticism from the community about a certain project, and they'll say, we want you to deny it. And we as a council could deny it, but then the private property owner could sue the city and then ultimately be successful in getting that project built, but at a higher expense to taxpayers. So that was something that was a big learning curve for me. The other thing is just we're a relatively young city, and even though that's the case, there's so much history here, and some of it's really good, and then some of it's really tough because being new on scene, I'll find a problem that's been a problem for 35 years or 45 years, and having to work through some of the baggage or some of the drama or some of the past history to get through to a solution. That's another thing that has been very difficult. And I think that it takes a specific type of personality to have thick enough skin and say, okay, I'm taking a lot of insults right now because of the past, but I'm going to continue to work forward on a solution.
Thank you, Kellie. Tony or Catherine, do you have a?
Well, I was going to say the same thing as Kellie, but she beat me to it there. So that is indeed, there is this idea that you have discretion to reject projects because you had enough emails from people that said they didn't like it. And it's very difficult to deal with a situation like that because while you may ultimately agree with the emailers, there is no basis in law for the idea of rejecting it. So it's that whole issue of discretion, and when you have or do not have discretion, the ability to exercise discretion. The other thing, and it does also go to a little bit of what Kellie talked about, are these legacy infrastructure issues where our built environment is over 130 years old when you take a look at our railroad corridor, for example. And making changes to that is very expensive and very difficult because it is governed by the Interstate Commerce Clause of the Constitution, as well as several agencies that are kind of difficult to work with. And looking at the history of the railroad and the land grants and gifts that we made to the railroadmen, it's really especially frustrating to own the corridor here is publicly owned, but we're still essentially beholden to the private enterprises that originally built it. And so it's really been challenging. I've been serving now almost 8 years, and I think we've made some really important progress and got some agreements in place that are going to, I think, over the long haul, be very beneficial to the community, but there are still significant pains that we're experiencing as we try and wrestle with the law relating to crossing the railroad tracks, for example, and the infrastructure requirements that it takes to connect across those. So we're working on it, and I hope to have the opportunity to continue serving and to continue working on those matters, and look forward to advancing some very important projects for our community.
Thank you, Tony. And Mayor Blakespear, or Mayor Catherine, would you like me to call you Mayor Catherine?
Whichever.
Okay.
Or just Catherine, it's okay.
Okay, all right.
Well, first, thank you for doing this today. I know you said that you had just met us on the phone, which is true. And we're grateful that you were willing to step into it. And I think in a way, your newness to it is one of the reasons that we thought you'd be a good person to do it, because you bring an outsider's perspective to talking with us. So I guess to the question of what's been surprising, I think something that surprised me is that when there's a larger principle, like we should have more affordable housing, or we should help homeless people, that there are so many different factors that go into the complexity of accomplishing that. And I think that from the outside, it can really seem as if there's a clearer path. And you look back at, I mean, to what my colleagues have said, which were both great points. You know, you look at things that have been these systemic struggles in our community, and you wonder why past councils or past community groups haven't been able to handle them. And in some ways, something like affordable housing, when it's lacked a natural constituency of residents who have been advocating solely around that, it can be very hard to move when you have a counterweight that's arguing against housing. And so I look at those types of problems and think that part of our job is to build the constituencies, to build the education of our residents and the understanding. And just when it comes back to some of the issues around just shared facts, what are some of the facts about housing law, or what does the city have to do? The question of we are not deciding yes or no on housing, we're deciding how. And so how to have that conversation about housing with residents in a way that can be successful. I think that's one of the struggles that even after working in it for a long time, it still remains something that is tremendously difficult. But maintaining that energy and enthusiasm to do that community work and to try to find those solutions so we can tackle those things, that is the art of doing this job well.
Thank you. Yeah, the idea of educating us residents, we don't get all the information, and we don't even have time for it, some of it. So it's super important that we get to know you, and so yeah, thank you for that. So as far as education, one of the things that I don't really know a lot about, but I hear a lot about, is the Leucadia Streetscape. And Catherine, can you talk about where that is right now? I feel like there's some people that are really rallying against that, but it's in the works, correct?
Yes, but I really think you should ask I would suggest
Tony,
starting with Kellie and Tony, because it is their district. And actually Kellie's district is the one that's starting in before the end of the year, the El Portal undercrossing. So I think that it would be more appropriate to give it to her.
All right, well, thank you. See, that's an education that I needed to have. Thank you. Kellie, do you want to start?
Sure, I'll start. So there's a lot of different ways to enter the story of the streetscape, but I'll start it from my perspective, which is having grown up there on Melrose Avenue, just behind Juanita's Taco Shop. My mom was a teacher at Pollocky Central for 30 years. And I either would illegally cross the tracks to go with her to school in the morning, or I would get on a bus that was on 3rd Street, and it would be about a 40-minute drive on the bus to get to school. And it was less than a mile away. So for so long, the community has wanted to be able to, as Tony says, remove the barrier of the tracks running through the heart of our community. And so this year, the El Portal Undercross will finally break ground. And part of the grant requirement, because we did receive a grant from the state of California for this project that will cover a portion of it, was that we needed to make the intersection there on Highway 101 safe, because this is now going to be a safe route to school where it has not been in the past. And so you can't put this undercross there and then expect little children to go across a 4-lane highway. So the options there to address that intersection would have been a signalized intersection or a 4-way stop like we have there at Juanita's. And neither of those were the preferred alternatives by the community, because the signalized intersection creates delays because every time somebody presses the button to cross, it slows down all the cars in both directions. So you could have 4 lanes of cars that are just sitting there waiting for, group after group to go through that light. So the roundabout allows traffic to continue moving, and children only have to cross 1 lane at a time to get through. So the origin of Streetscape will be right there at that intersection. And I think that it will have the effect of showing people that we're going to alleviate a lot of the congestion concerns right now, because that 4-way stop at Marchetta and Juanita's will be going away. My next door neighbors experienced a T-bone collision in that 4-way stop. My mom, who's in a wheelchair, when she needs to take the bus, she has to cross 4 lanes of traffic, and she's below the view shed of most drivers, so they don't see her. So it's very dangerous, and it also is very inefficient for drivers. So by making these 2 improvements, it's the first phase of Streetscape, and I think it'll really do a lot to illustrate how effective it will be to calm traffic and open up all these opportunities for the first time for people on bikes and strollers and in wheelchairs, on skateboards, to be able to get outside of their cars and navigate our community without feeling safe only in their car.
I love that. I love riding my bike. I wish more people would get on bikes. In fact, I wanted to write you guys and say, hey, how do we get people on bicycles? Peter, I see you have your hand raised. Do you want to say something, Kelly?
Yes, if just a brief point.
Absolutely.
I live just north of Santa Fe Avenue, where we have a roundabout that, as far as the traffic is concerned, I think really works very well. As far as pedestrians are concerned, I'm not so sure, because many times cars don't expect to stop, and pedestrians are there, and they are very tentative about crossing some of those incoming streets. Is that going to be controlled somehow by pedestrians, wheelchair people, etc.?
Oh, that's a good question. So I think that just by the nature of bringing the speeds down, it will be safer for people to cross there. I think I've heard some concerns about maybe this roundabout that you're speaking of. Is it on Devonshire?
That's Santa Fe.
Yes.
It's on Santa Fe. Is that Devonshire? I'm not. Yes, that's right. Yes.
So I have a neighbor who lives on Devonshire. We're working with that neighbor because he has a young son that uses that roundabout to get to the community park. And he has also asked for some enhanced lighting. And so that's something that we'll work through with this specific roundabout that you're talking about, and see if we also need these treatments here at the El Portal undercross or roundabout.
That'll be great.
Thanks, Peter. Tony, did you want to chime in?
Well, I would just follow up that with a conversation generally about how Americans have been slow to embrace the roundabout. And I think it's been fairly well studied and presented that the roundabouts are safer. There are fewer T-bone collisions. There are many fewer impact possibilities, impact points. But to Peter's point, which is that oftentimes you have cars that are sort of racing towards the roundabouts that don't, approach them the way they are intended to be approached, which is slowly and visually identifying if there's a car that's entering the roundabout or if there's a pedestrian waiting to cross. So it is a fact that we need to do a better job of educating people. And I think that one of the things that will help to do that is that when there are more roundabouts, that it will help that by its nature. And, the only point that I would add about this process, while it was the roundabouts were the community preferred alternative, it was not unanimous. And what we've seen over the years is this kind of constant battle over whether the streetscape should include the 5 roundabouts or so, or whether those should be signalized intersections. And I think that the previous councils had made the correct decision, which was to focus on building roundabouts, because I think that they work better for all users of the roadway. But it's an absolute fact that there are people that are absolutely convinced that is not the case, and they are continuing to hope that this project will change. And so it has animated elections and over the last few cycles, and it certainly is part of the conversation in this year's election. But I think that the design that we currently have is the correct one, and I look forward to getting some grant funding to get started on phase 2 just as quickly as possible.
Thanks, Tony.
And I'll just weigh in on Leucadia Streetscape that I think there are always a lot of different ways to design things. And one of the things that I think about in terms of what I've learned doing this job for the last 6 years, being the mayor for 4 and on the council for 2 years, is that there are a lot of really smart people and a lot of experts in road design who have done great things in our city and in other cities. And I think that it really has been transformational for communities when they put in projects like Leucadia Streetscape, because the previous road configuration was really exclusively about the auto. So it was all about the car and going where people would be going in their car. And there was very little consideration for these other user groups, whether it's people out walking their dog or on a bike, or like Kelly said, in a wheelchair, or even just people who are differently abled. I mean, in terms of how people get around our city. And I think we all in Encinitas acknowledge that we have this wonderful climate. We love to be outside. We're an outdoorsy community, and that people, if they could walk 1/4 of a mile to get to the school, to get to the market, to get to their friend's house, to get to the park, they would do that if we made it safe for them. So one of the things that I've been focused on, and the rest of the council also has been focused on, is trying to transform our streets so that they are more usable for more people. And I think that works, of course, to help drivers too, because the more people who aren't in the car creating congestion makes it faster for you who are in your car. And Leucadia Streetscape is just one of those projects. It happens to be one that seems to be on the ballot almost every election because it doesn't get finished within a 2-year time. And I'm really grateful that we're starting it now, so we'll be able to prove the concept, to see how the roundabout works, to see the underpass and the parking pods. There are 2 parking pods as part of this, to see the reduced laneage and some of the other things like a parking assist lane and things that we just don't talk about very much, but are part of Leucadia Streetscape that will make it functional. And I really have been, when I look at the other things in the city that we've done, even things I didn't expect to work well. Like, I'll just give one quick example. The free right turn lane at Chesterfield was eliminated. So this was in Cardiff when there was a whole redo of the Chesterfield intersection. And I was personally convinced that eliminating the free right turn lane would result in a traffic backup onto San Elijo into Cardiff, because it just didn't make any sense to me that that wouldn't happen. But the traffic engineer said that the modeling does not predict that this will create that. And because of various things around the signalized intersection changing and this and that, and lo and behold, they were right. And actually it is not more congested, and that intersection in general works better for everybody. And so when they say Leucadia Streetscape, when it goes down to 1 lane with parking assist lane, with bike lane, with roundabouts, has an increased time of about 1 minute going end to end at rush hour, I believe them. You know, I say, I don't know, I don't have the expertise for this, but I do know that this has been extensively studied, and it is a small amount of additional time that you will spend in traffic at rush hour. And during all the other times, traffic will just flow much more smoothly. It will keep up a continuous flow. It'll be slower, but it will be much more pleasant, and it will be much safer. And so all of those things go to a community enhancement, a community improvement for Leucadia that I think residents want and deserve and will really appreciate having once it's finished.
Catherine. So there's another topic that I know a lot of people have some charge about, and I actually need some education on this, and it's about housing and the vacation rentals that are here. And I was in the Rotary Club briefly, and I remember somebody from the city of Encinitas coming and saying, hey, we've got to figure out, you know, how to get more affordable housing, and we're doing this ADU program. And then I heard that there was some kind of ruling happening where the city was going to get tough about rentals and how people rent out their space, whether for vacation or longer term rentals. What can you clarify what, do you know what I'm talking about? Am I just crazy? We have any kind of regulation about VRBOs and Airbnbs and short-term versus long-term rental for people's properties? Tony, I saw you nod your head.
Yes, we do have a program. You have to have a permit in order to rent space in your home on a short-term basis. And you have to fill out the permit application, and you have to show where the parking is going to be allowed. You're required to display a placard that indicates that you have a permit for short-term rental. You're supposed to provide a telephone number for contact on that placard so that your neighbors can contact you in the event that there are unruly guests. And so those are just some of the things that are required as part of the program. It is also a requirement that you pay the transient occupancy tax that our hotels are charging to guests who stay there. So there are a number of rules that TOT would need to be paid every quarter. So, that's just a few of the things that are required if you're interested in doing that. And we get complaints occasionally about the need to rein these programs in, and I think that there are some more things that we should be doing as a city. And in another term, if I'm allowed the opportunity to serve, that I will be pursuing that. But in the meantime, yes, there are several rules. And we do have on the city website a GIS map that was created that shows all the registered vacation rentals. So if your next door neighbor seems to have a lot of activity at their house that is transient guests, you might check that website and see if they're registered as a short-term vacation rental. And if they are not, you might be able to ask them why not. And then the other alternative would, of course, be to call code enforcement and ask why not. And so there are some processes that people need to be aware of. And my hope is that we can get to the point where there's peace between neighbors who are doing short-term vacation rentals.
Is there any kind of limit how many there can be in the city?
There are currently no limits that I'm aware of.
Okay.
And I do also know that placing limits on these units in the coastal zone, which is where the Coastal Commission has a say. So if we were to change our ordinances and we had to amend our local coastal plan, the Coastal Commission could take exception to what it is that we are trying to do, because it's their mission to provide the opportunity for more people to come to the ocean, to see the ocean and to enjoy the ocean. And so these short-term vacation rentals are, to the Coastal Commission, a very important feature of coastal cities.
Yes, I agree.
And then the only thing I would add to what Tony just said is on accessory dwelling units, because that was part of your question.
Yeah.
About something you had heard about that. So our accessory dwelling units are not to be used as vacation rentals because we're trying to provide homes, not hotel rooms. And so they can't be rented for less than 30 days. And so having a regulation that requires 30 days or longer for a rental term makes it so that they're de facto not vacation rentals, because very few people go on vacation for a full 30 days in one place. And so I think the number of vacation rentals that we have in the city is about 500. And I think we have about 25,000 total homes. So, just to put that in perspective, it's, most of our housing stock, of course, is still housing. It really is not becoming hotels.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I mean, I hear a lot of people talking. Kelly, did you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I will add on to that we also don't allow short-term vacation rentals in multifamily buildings or triplexes. So they are allowed in single family homes and they are allowed in duplexes, but triplexes can't have them and multifamily homes can't either. And so that was part of when I was first getting online as a council member, a lot of tough conversations that I had to have with people who had been long-time short-term vacation rental owners. And when the city kind of tightened the rules on operating in triplexes, they had to make the decision to rent that home out to a permanent resident rather than as a short-term vacation rental. So yeah, and I will add too that this is one issue that as a newcomer, there are years and years of frustrations between neighbors and certain property owners, especially in the neighborhood where I live near Moonlight Beach. And that it was really toxic for my the house that lives right next door to us became a vacation rental. And it was very frustrating to go through the process of working with the city to bring it into compliance and work with the management company. And eventually it worked and they are compliant now. But this is something where I ask for the patience of residents in my community that, you know, give me the benefit of the doubt, be civil when I'm attempting to work with you, because I do want to help you, but I don't know all these years of history that you have with the person next door. So being able to have those conversations civilly really helps me be able to advocate on behalf of the resident.
One other thing I would add is that we currently are engaging a consultant who has the ability to mine the data that is on these VRBO and Airbnb sites to identify Encinitas units that are perhaps not permitted. And there have been some recent discoveries of big party houses that the code enforcement department is following up with some action to bring those particular properties into compliance with the law. So we are becoming a little bit more proactive, although we do often depend upon the complaint system to our code enforcement department. But it's not meant to be the wild west of short-term rentals. So we need to come up with some strategies for addressing some of these issues.
Thanks, Tony. So since we're talking about housing, and thank you, Catherine, for going back and clarifying about the ADU. That was definitely something that I was curious about, and you made that very clear. So there's been a lot of, you know, sometimes, I don't know why I do this, but I go on Nextdoor and I see posts on there. And that is actually where I learned about the homeless parking lot, or I don't know what project is called, but there's a lot of energy around that. And where is the city with that program? Like, how far in are we? Catherine, do you want to?
Yeah, so I think you're talking about the parking lot for people who have lost their home but still have a car for them to stay overnight. And
thank you for clarifying that.
It's oh yeah, but it's in the vernacular it's called the homeless parking lot.
It is, but it's not. It's
yeah, because it's a pre-enrollment program, so people have to be part of trying to better their lives, get back into housing, and work out the various problems they have. So it's not like a Caltrans park and ride lot where you just pull over and stay there at night and then you're on your own. You know, it's really highly managed. And so it is, I would say it's maybe, I'm not sure, 6 months, 8 months in now. And I think it's going really well. I mean, you said there's a lot of energy or heat around it. And I think fundamentally it comes down to there's a worry, a deep-seated worry from some residents in our city, that if we provide help to people who need it, that we are laying out the welcome mat and inviting more. And I think the difficulty with this is to say, how can we help people? We as a city help our own in the same way we expect other cities to help their own, but also recognizing that there might be some overlap. Like, for example, if Encinitas helps somebody who is a Carlsbad resident, you know, I feel okay with that. I mean, Carlsbad is helping our residents. You know, we don't have a homeless shelter, but Carlsbad does. And so there's certainly some transferring over of city boundaries, but a recognition that every city needs to help people some and help them get back on their feet. So how do we provide services in a way that can better the lives of people, protect our public spaces? You know, we don't want to have people living in our parks or in our downtown or on the streets, or, you know, that's of course not good for anybody, for the business, for the public, for the person living there. So how do we communicate and talk about helping people who need it without bleeding ourselves dry? You know, we don't want to spend like every last penny on it because we have other things to do, like pave streets and keep parks open and pay for law enforcement and fire and the things that cities do, but also not lay out the welcome mat. And so I think in the very biggest picture, to me, that's the dialogue, is this concern about the help. The homeless parking lot is somehow this magnet. Now, I think the data shows that that's really not true. It hasn't turned out to be true. And the data also shows that more and more people are living with financial distress, that housing costs are driving homelessness in many sectors. Of course, not everyone. There's obvious drug addiction and mental health issues and alcohol and other things that contribute to it. But most people did start housed. You know, most people didn't grow up homeless. They started housed. They lost their home through some precipitating financial crisis or series of crises, and they are on the street. And so if we can get them off the street, so I see the parking lot as homeless prevention. They have not yet fallen into street homelessness. And the longer people are living on the street, the harder they are to help. So if we can get them early and help stop their downward slide, it's better for everybody. So this program is part of the city trying to do a little bit more and helping people who need it. And the data suggests that it has been a success for the people who have used it.
So it is currently registered. It's operational, and it's a prevention program. And thank you for clarifying that. I think that's really good to note that it is a prevention program, and so it's already I didn't even know that. That's how much it's impacted me.
Yeah, and my colleagues might want to add something on it too. I think
yeah, Tony, do you have a comment about it?
No, other than the fact that you know, I think that it's especially important to have a program like this during a pandemic. And, you know, the reality is we've got some people in a really, you know, terrible situation, and anything that we can do to help a few, I think, is important to do, especially in these circumstances. And I think that, you know, it's going to be important for the next council to you know, wrestle with some of the details around this program. Is it going to be a one-time program? Is it going to continue? What shape will it take if it does continue? Will there be any regional participation in it? Will the jurisdictions in the North County actually step up and get together and do some things to help the homeless? There are a number of questions that surround this particular issue. And I think that one of the things that has come from this conversation, which has not been easy, it's been a very challenging conversation because people have definitely, you know, have their opinions about this particular issue, but continuing the conversation and continuing to make progress to address some of these important issues, I think is what I hope will come in the year ahead.
Thanks, Tony. Kelly, do you have anything to add?
No, I believe that was well stated. All I would add is that prior to approving this program, Mayor Blakespear and I attended sort of a teach-in put on by the San Diego County Sheriff's Department. And they were quite clear about the problems that they face with managing homelessness from a law enforcement perspective. And they had gathered representatives of cities in the room to say, how can we be better partners? How can we regionally approach this issue that only seems to be getting worse? And one of the suggestions brought forward by the San Diego County Sheriff's Department was that cities take on operating a safe parking lot for the prevention purposes. And so to me, that was, you know, a sign that we could prevent the problem before it gets worse. And that was very compelling for me. I'll also say that in this time that folks are so isolated at home, we all find ourselves spending more time behind our screens and, you know, finding community in chat rooms and on Facebook and Nextdoor, and it can be really scary in there, and you can go and read somebody's account of something that happened and become frightened. And I think that the more time we spend away from our computers and actually in the community, the more that we see that the things we think are problems or things to be scared of, they're not actually happening. And a lot of these times where you read something scary on Nextdoor, you ask the sheriff, did this happen? And it didn't happen. It's just largely a spark that spreads a big rumor.
I've actually called the sheriff myself because I needed to get clear information about something that happened. And I was like, I don't think that's the truth. A lot of people, you know, it's that game telephone. So there was somebody sent in a question, and I'm just going to read it. I've been able to attend a few council meetings, and one thing that stands out to me is the fact that most votes by council are either 5-0 or 4-1. How do you specifically and the council work to ensure that there is a diversity of thought?
Well, I'll jump in here because I've faced this question a lot, and I feel strongly about the answer, which is that I think that a group of 5, when you watch them in action, you want them to work toward a consensus answer. So you want them to listen to each other, to do the hard work of saying, what is it that is most important to you? How can we make the solution incorporate what you want and what I want and what he wants and what she wants, so that the 5 of us are all represented with that answer? And I think if you watch our council meetings, most of the time on anything that's contentious, you will see all of us expressing our opinions, and you'll see the different thought process. So there's not in any way a rubber stamp, a lockstep. We are all individual people with our own backgrounds, which are different, and we all have our own opinions. And I don't think any of us are shrinking violets. I mean, it really is a group of 5 highly engaged people who are trying to find our way to consensus. Now, not every vote does end up being, of course, you do end up with split votes, and you find them on various subjects. You know, people will say, oh, they're all 5-0, and that's just really not the case. But I think of it, if we can be a council that's not driven by political theater, individual personalities, grandstanding, all the things that can lead to essentially not a highly functioning city council that wastes a lot of time, that has a lot of things happening that are just not related to bettering the lives of Encinitas. I think that's what you want. You know, you really want people who are working together with their teammates, whoever they are. And I mean, we all are elected individually, right? So we are elected by different constituencies. And then how we get there, if we can find a way to all work together in a way that's civil and demonstrates that highest level of active listening, consensus building, compromise, to me, that is a high functioning group. And I think we all criticize like Congress for not doing that, right? We say, why won't you work together to get a X and so done? And so, you know, you see us really being highly functional at this local level. So that, you know, that's my feeling being in it, and also watching it and having other people watch it and see, yeah, it does look like you all are really engaged and trying to find consensus and compromise.
Yeah, that was well said. Anybody else want to, Kelly or?
Well, I always get a kick out of people who suggest that the mayor has us all in thrall, because I think anybody that knows me knows that I can be pretty hard-headed and stubborn at times, especially when I think that the approach that I am advocating for is the one that we should all embrace. And so it is kind of funny to hear that. I do share many values with the mayor, and I think that she does an excellent job in leading the council at meetings and in planning the agenda. She is also our representative at some very important regional boards. And but when you get down to it, she's got one vote just like I've got one vote. And so the whole purpose of a deliberative body is to kind of engage one another and to share ideas and to come to a place where, in fact, you are moving forward an important issue for the city. And so just this notion that you need to have more 3-2 votes, or you need to have somebody who has a philosophical bent that is 180 degrees different than yours is just not, you know, in my opinion, something that we should aspire to as a city council. So I'm glad to have a group of very engaged council members who know the city well and are share the belief that we should make decisions that are in the best interest of the city and pretty much leave the rest at home.
Thanks, Tony. Kelly, you got anything to add there?
Sure. I will add that as the only appointed council member, you really do have to earn your credibility. And I think that a campaign will really help somebody earn some credibility around town, because you really don't put yourself through this process if you just plan to rubber stamp things. We do share a lot of similar values on council, but I always tease Mayor Blakespear and I go, it was my organization that convinced you about Streetscape. So people often say, oh, you're just going to go along with Streetscape because the mayor wanted you to. And it's like, I've been working on Streetscape now for almost 10 years. And I feel like a broken record sometimes with just how committed I am to this project. And you know, it really took a lot of education, I think, for council members, getting Councilmember Mosca up to speed on the streetscape and Councilmember Hubbard. And it's constantly an education that I'm happy to keep engaging in. But really, I have not changed my message much. And so I think I've been on the record for a long time prior to even serving on council. And I think folks know what to expect when electing me.
Thanks, Kelly. I didn't know this, but somebody had told me recently that once you vote, that you don't get the mailers anymore. I was like, really? Is that really true? I can avoid the mailers? I hate those things. A couple came yesterday. I'm like, oh, I hate it when they get like this. And I was kind of confused. And this is another thing that elections bring out that are not comfortable. I'm not comfortable with it. But when people start saying, oh, this person's done that and this person's done that. And one of the things that when I was a little teeny, I wanted to come in here pretty ignorant. And I think I've done that. But one of the things I was confused about was there was something that came in the mail and it was from a PAC. And it wasn't from the mayor's specifically, but it was from a PAC that was supporting you. Can you talk, yes, Catherine, can you talk about PACs and how you're affiliated with them? I'm actually very ignorant about your affiliation with PACs or how they support you and your relationship with PACs.
Yeah, thank you for asking that. I think a lot of people don't even notice who it comes from. So they assume that it's from the campaign of the candidate or the opponent of the candidate.
Right.
So in Encinitas, we have a campaign contribution limit of $250 per person, which is relatively low. Our neighbor Carlsbad has no campaign contribution limit. So, somebody could give any amount to the candidate themselves. And they're variable across the 18 cities in the county. So that's what the contributions are that the candidate controls. But then because of Citizens United, the Supreme Court case that allows for the current system, which is this outside money can be donated into PACs. And so the PACs they're run by individual people and they can accept money, but they have to disclose where it comes from. And so what you see on the website is there are PACs who are in favor of the candidates on this call. There are PACs opposed to the candidates on this call. There's a PAC that's opposed to or that's similar for our opponents. There are multiple different PACs, and even like the firefighters, they're a PAC as well. So the different mailers are from all those different groups, whatever their advocacy is. And on the city's website, it says, is this opposing a candidate or is this in support of a candidate? And so you can see that where that's coming from. And it seems like in some ways, those rules, sometimes you notice them not totally being followed. Like the money for our opponents will say that it's only to oppose us, but yet then you'll see some ad on Facebook or something that says vote for these 3 people. So sometimes that, I think, but when you only have 2 people in a race, if you have a PAC that's opposing one of them, it's obviously de facto for the other one, because of the nature of the fact that there are only 2 people.
So how are they affiliated with your campaign? They're sending it out. It's not being sent from you. Do they give you money to send things out? They're sending it right on their own.
Well, yes, thank you for clarifying that. So they are not allowed to coordinate with the campaign at all. So, I see things in the mail for the first time, just like you do, which is interesting and weird. And I've heard other candidates who are at higher levels say, the higher the office, the more disconnected the PAC is from even the issues in the race, you know, because they're not some local people or local issues. And I think, you know, you even see this to some degree in our race or in our city. But yeah, it's a difficult thing because sometimes messages are coming out or people are contributing to something and you might not have any idea really what that's related to.
Yeah, so they don't send it by you first to get the
And I mean, I'll just say as an example, like some of the groups that are opposing us, so the three of us on this call, are like Citizens for a Better East County, $10,000, you know, and that, you know, that's a lot of money. Or the San Diego County Gun Owners PAC, and it's, you know, those are odd. And then there'll be a local couple that gives $10,000 against us. And so some of that, you know, it can be hard to really trace that back. Like, what is the interest there? Or what? I mean, I see the information and I guess other people might know what's going on, but maybe not. You know, it's one of those things which can be a bit mysterious.
I actually know that the gun owners were unhappy with an ordinance that we passed that required trigger guards, and so it didn't surprise me that they were participating. And you know, the one thing I wanted to mention is that the ability to turn off the mailers is dependent upon when the mailing list was pulled from the registrar of voters computer. So you just by voting won't turn it off the next day necessarily, but
so vote early.
It'll generally follow that if somebody's trying to save some money by not sending to people who have already voted, then they will update their list. You know, I think one of the worst Supreme Court decisions that has ever been rendered was Citizens United. And what it essentially did is it said that money is speech. And so it opened up the floodgates for a whole bunch of very wealthy people to get involved in races. And I think in many ways it has upset a particular equilibrium. That said, the reality is that in this business, you don't want to unilaterally disarm. So if one side's going to be supported by PACs, then you know the reality is that it's you know, you're going to have a tough time if your side isn't also being supported by PACs. But ultimately, candidates don't have any say in any of that, and so there has been a lot of stir and drang over this issue, and I wish there were a better way to conduct elections, and but we are as candidates just you know, a small piece of the system that we have, and we need to get out and try and convey our message to people about what it is that we're interested in doing and how we plan to do that. And I have continued to focus on that. And the things that are happening with these mailers, I have no control over that come from PACs.
Right. Okay. Thanks for clarifying that, Kelly. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think just to reiterate that oftentimes people will say, oh, you accepted money from a PAC. That's not legal for us to do. And so we don't ever accept money from PACs, and we don't ever coordinate with PACs. That would be illegal for us to do. So that's not the case. And, you know, I often check the city's website, which anybody's welcome to do, to research and understand who the people are who are putting enormous amounts of money into local elections. And if we had a chat here, I would put the URL in there, but if anybody wants to email me, I'm happy to send it to them. But you can go through all the filings and you can see the names of the individuals who have put money there. And it's really telling. And I think that some of the PACs who are supporting our candidacy are from people who live in Encinitas. And then you look at those who are opposing us, and it's a little more anonymous. It's largely not just based in Encinitas. And so I encourage everybody who's on the call to do your research and see who is sending those mailers. And also, the sooner you vote, the fewer phone calls you'll get too. So once you have voted, then the voter files will show that you voted, and your phone will stop ringing off the hook too.
Okay. We're going to wrap up soon, but I would like to just ask each of you, well, I wanted to ask, like, you know, what's your favorite swear word or whatever they do on Inside the Actor Studio, but I'm not going to do that. But just presuming that you're all elected, what are you looking forward to either continuing or starting in your next term? Kellie, do you want to start?
Sure. I am very eager, as you've noticed, and I think a lot of other Encinitas residents have noticed, is that we have a lot more bike riders on our streets, and it's causing some great opportunities, and it's also causing some frustration for downtown residents specifically. So I'm really looking forward to embarking on a lot of education about biking on our streets and improving that outreach. We have 40% more ridership in the region as a whole on bikes, and so working towards that end. Also, I'm really pleased at some of these shared streets pilots. So people are giving a lot of positive feedback that they like dining outdoors, and the restaurants aren't suffering so much from having lost parking right out in front. So just seeing that project maybe take on a long-term place in our city is something I'm excited about.
Yeah, that's cool. How about you, Tony? What do you want to continue or start, or what are you excited about?
Well, I'm excited that Streetscape is going to get kicked off here, as well as another undercrossing of the rail corridor. I think that there are some very important cross-connect ideas that came from some planning documents that we just recently completed that are intended to make it easier to get across the tracks in North Leucadia as well. And so I'm looking forward to advancing those. I'm also very interested in making improvements in the El Camino Real corridor. It's one of those legacy areas that you can see there's a distinct difference between the northern part of El Camino Real and Encinitas, where Encinitas Ranch development, undergrounded utilities, has an open wetlands, and then you go south in the county planned area of El Camino Real, and you've got a ton of utilities overhead. You've got phone poles everywhere. You've got a whole bunch of driveways that are causing traffic slowdowns and pedestrian hazards. And, you know, I think that engaging that community in conversation about how we might reconfigure the El Camino Real stretch of roadway, I think would be very beneficial to all of us, because it's a really important part of our community when it comes to tax revenue. It's our retail area. And I think that if there were ways to attract people on foot or by bicycle to that area, I think you would find that it would be a way to enhance the experience that our residents get to share as they go do their shopping in that area. So I'm looking forward to getting that conversation started. The circulation element is kind of wonky, but it's really something that's long overdue for an update. It's especially important as we start talking about multimodal ways of getting around our town. I know that there is, from where I sit, a really important issue, and that is slowing cars down. When pedestrians are hit by cars that are going slower, they have a much greater chance of surviving. And we have seen way too many people hit and killed in the last few years, in fact, in the last few days. So it's very sad, but it just makes me redouble my efforts to address issues related to the interactions between bikes, pedestrians, and automobiles.
Thank you. I really appreciate that as somebody that likes to ride their bike. So thank you. And Catherine, how about you? What are you excited about for the future of Encinitas?
Well, I mean, with the election in just 2 weeks, you know, if we win in 2 weeks, we have the privilege of continuing to work on the issues that we've been working on. And I think when I think about the next term, I reflect on the things that we've accomplished and that I've been the most proud of in the past 2 terms. And those are our environmental commitments, becoming a greener city, our deep work around housing. You know, we finally have a compliant housing element, and doing more work on building affordable housing. I feel really proud of our accessory dwelling unit program, our granny flat program, continuing to do more in that area, tackling homelessness. And then, I mean, homelessness is on the continuum of the housing continuum, right? So
Yeah.
it's like you start with people who don't have a home, and then all the way affordable housing and moderate housing and upper income housing. So the whole housing picture, I think, is something that I look forward to working on and to trying to make progress in. And then the mode shift. I mean, really all of this about biking and walking comes down to how do we make it safer to get around outside your car? And those projects are some things that I think have been transformational for people, the ones that we've done. And I look forward to that next group of things that we will do. So all of those things we've worked on are the things I want to keep working on. And I think we have that track record of having worked well together, of having accomplished a lot, and doing it arm in arm with the community, saying, what do you want to see? How can we make this city greener and cleaner? And how can we be a more active outdoorsy community? How can we provide more affordable housing and really value equity and diversity? And all of those things are making the city a better city and helping the residents who live here and improving their quality of life. And so that commitment is what I will bring to the next term.
Thank you. I really appreciate all of you. I appreciate all of you that joined us tonight. And thank you for putting up with me and, my inexperience with a lot of things and educating me. And I want to educate myself more on this stuff. I really appreciate all three of you being here and your service to our community. And I believe that you do have all of our best interests at heart and in your mind, and that you're and I appreciate that I heard a lot that you ask experts, right? You bring experts in. Thank you for that too. If people have questions, obviously we have a lot of questions. We can't get to all of them, but if you have questions, you can reach out to any three of our candidates tonight. Your emails are always readily available. I know that, if you have something that you want to talk about, they'll make time for you. And I'm looking forward to getting more involved and being more supportive by educating myself and maybe attending meetings and doing a little bit more. There's more that I can do to help community. So I appreciate this experience and being asked to do this. It's going to push me a little bit more to leave my comfort zone and do more for our city. So thank you. Thank you all for being here. That concludes our forum tonight.
Thank you, CoCo.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for watching and joining us. Good night.
Good job, CoCo.
Thank you.